All right. So I better put my phone away, right? Some nice background music. Okay, SG2 on Space, episode number 26. Today is another wonderful night, except my eyes are itchy and my nose seems to have issues, so my apologies if I have to clear my throat occasionally for demonstration purposes, right? No, just kidding. Okay, hopefully that doesn't keep going. So as noted, SG2 on Space, episode number 26. As always, follow us at facebook.com/The Shen Show. That was his original name, TheShenshow. Or, and definitely follow Action One Media, who I'm in the studio, right? As always, facebook.com/Action One Media, as well as go on the website, weareA1.com. And of course, you can watch us also on YouTube, which is where everything's linked. So you can go to youtube.com/CAST725. That's my personal one. Or you can go to youtube.com and find Action One Media, which has a whole bunch of various videos, not just my show. Okay? So, with that, originally was going to interview someone, but that's been delayed a little bit to next week. So in the meantime, let's talk about some of the special announcements, right? So probably one of the biggest things in this country is a recent announcement by our administration that the plan has been set. We are going to go back to the moon. All right. So people have been talking about this for a while, but now the stakes are it's even tighter. 2024 instead of the previously 2028 to get a human back on the surface of the moon. That is pretty ambitious. So let's see, that's like 5 years from now. So can we do it? Well, according to Vice President Mike Pence, on March 26th, that's a Tuesday, 2019, that's what he said, right? And so, his whole speech is ridiculously long, but I figure we can play a short clip from it where he basically talks about nothing political. He just talks about what what NASA's plan should be. It's called Space Directive Number 1, I believe, which is going back to the moon. In this, he gave a Marshall Space Flight Center, which is one of, just to give you a background, Marshall pretty much has built most of the rocket engines that NASA has used, and they're currently extremely engaged in SLS, which is a space launch system, which is going to be the biggest rocket slash, basically space rocket ever, and it supposedly has enough power to carry a bunch of people to the moon. Okay, so think of a bigger version of Saturn V. So if we can go to, say, 4 minutes and 30 seconds, skip all the blah, 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 blah stuff, because that's how you start speeches, right? You talk about, you don't get to the meat until like a few minutes later. So I will make a few commentary after we play this clip, because at least of my viewpoints, and obviously there were some experts that also, discussed what he said.
Signed into law the largest NASA budget since the days of the Apollo program, and we fully funded the Space Launch System and the Orion space capsule. And of course, in December of 2017, the President signed Space Policy Directive 1 to return Americans to the moon and prioritize crewed missions to the lunar surface. SPD-1, as it's come to be known, marked a watershed moment for America's space enterprise. Since the disastrous decision to cancel the Constellation program in 2010, the truth is NASA's exploration efforts were left adrift with no clear direction, focus, or mission. To your credit, the men and women of the Marshall Space Flight Center never gave up. You persevered with distinction through a time of indecision at the highest levels of our national government, and you continued to do your best, which is to build the greatest and most powerful rockets ever known to man. Give yourselves a round of applause for persevering here at Marshall and developing the rockets of the future. With Space Policy Directive 1, President Trump finally gave NASA the clear direction and clear mission that it needs. As President Trump said, we will return American astronauts to the moon for the first time since 1972 for long-term exploration and use. And as he said, not only to, quote, plant our flag and leave our footprints, but to establish a foundation on the moon for an eventual mission to Mars. Now, over the past 2 years, I've had the privilege to travel across this country and meet with many of NASA's more than 18,000 scientists, engineers, astronauts, and contract officers. Everywhere I go, I see renewed energy and excitement. The President's commitment to American leadership in space is inspiring. But to achieve our objectives, I came here today to say that NASA must meet that new spirit with new urgency and the focus that it all deserves.
All right, guys. So that was a little short clip. As you can see, we're pretty much fully going ahead. So I'm going to play another short clip. Basically, what he says about the motivation for doing so, just to give you guys a hint. Competition, apparently. So he's going to he has referenced Russia and China. Okay. And I'm not going to give quotes because you're going to watch this and he's going to say it himself. But also, interestingly enough, if you listen to what Mike Pence says, there's also not just competition with Russia or China, but also competition. Our worst enemy is apparently ourselves, in that we get complacent. We think, hey, this is it. You know, we've been going to space, we've been to the moon, so what's the point of continuous advancement, right? In order to do that. And that is very true, because it is easy to get complacent. So maybe that's why the target has been shifted up to 2024 instead of 2028. But in any case, let's play a little short clip from 10 minutes and 50 seconds to 12 minutes and 43 seconds, where he discusses the motivations.
We're in a space race today, just as we were in the 1960s. And the stakes are even higher. Last December, China became the first nation to land on the far side of the moon and revealed their ambition to seize the lunar strategic high ground and become the world's preeminent spacefaring nation. And for more than 7 years, without a viable human space launch program of our own, Russia has been charging the United States more than $80 million a seat every time an American astronaut travels to the International Space Station. But it's not just competition against our adversaries. We're also racing against our worst enemy, complacency. And the truth is, we've been here before. Nearly 62 years ago, the race for space began, and the Soviet Union took an early lead. But the sight of Sputnik blinking across the October sky spurred the American people to action. We refused to accept a future in space written by the enemies of freedom. We vowed to claim our rightful place as the undisputed leader in the exploration of the heavens, and 12 years later, the one giant leap occurred. We achieved our goal of American leadership in space. Now, more than 50 years later, we gather here today to say that it's up to this generation to meet the challenge of our time. And with the recommendations of this National Space Council, the recommendations will be approved today. I believe that we are rising to meet that challenge head on.
All right, so before we go on commercial break here, I'd just like to mention that talking to experts, I haven't talked to them, but experts have, looked at this, space policy experts, and the Russians are, there's a little bit of scaremongering here. The Russians are currently in no position to be in a space race. In fact, their space agency is kind of chaotic. China does have the space capabilities, but it is progressing extremely methodically. So it's not trying to race anybody. It's just going step by step. But I do agree that there's definitely a need to continue to progress. Otherwise, we do get complacent. And it's been so many years, since 1972, what is it, over 50 years now, that 60 years, I'm sorry, over 60 years now. So it's about time. So with that, let's go on break. And when we come back, we're talking about something else of urgency, let's say.
Put your money where your community is. Get in the action at weareA1.com.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your girl Janetta with A1 Live Pop-Up here at African Fashion Week Art, Wine, and Culture event. We are having an amazing time. They have some lovely art pieces to see. So go ahead, get down here. You still have time. Everybody get in the action.
Get in the action at weareA1.com.
All right, everybody, and we are back. You are listening to Shenge, S-H-E-N, last name G-E, SG2 on Space, episode number 26. Wow. Oh, by the way, before I continue, I would like to say it is officially spring now. All right, assuming you guys are listening live and not on a, what do you call it, a rerun. Spring was on March, the vernal equinox, March 22nd, I believe. So, if you guys are around the Houston area, you know that things are pretty much heating up very rapidly. It does seem like it's getting super hot already. So, for what it's worth. Not that it's, anyways. Okay. With that, speaking of vernal equinox, spring, and things heating up, the other really important thing I want to mention before we go into the great beyond is a recent United Nations warning on extreme weather. That's right. So there's been a recent report out from the United Nations, which, tends to make proclamations, do analysis, and okay, anyways. I did not know that the United Nations had a weather agency, but apparently they do. And they say that extreme weather last year, in 2018, has hit 62 million people worldwide and forced 2 million people to relocate due to human-induced climate change, basically worsening. The World Meteorological Organization's annual State of Global Climate Report, which you guys can find online, says Earth is nearly 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, or 1 degree Celsius warmer than when the industrial age started, World leaders are trying to limit warming to 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 2 degrees Celsius. Okay, what is the cause of this? Well, emissions from burning fuels such as coal, gasoline, diesel for electricity, and transportation, like your cars, for instance. All this is contributing, which in turn brings more intense storms, floods, and droughts. Here in Houston, we've seen the damage that Harvey has caused, and with that, there's only going to be more and more of those, more frequent, more powerful ones. So, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Guterres, has called on global leaders to convene in September 2019 with plans to reduce emissions. Not sure if that's going to happen. With our current administration here, that is hard to see happening. There's not much consideration for climate change here. But regardless, it is affecting everybody, okay? So this report should be very concerning. Now, going back to what we talked about last time about the Arctic ice melting pretty much. So there was another article that came out earlier this week, which basically said that apparently, well, scientists have known this for a while, but, you know, sometimes new data comes out to confirm, right? So apparently the warming Arctic is actually causing more droughts in other parts of the world. Okay, that may sound weird, but it's because a warming Arctic weakens the temperature difference between the tropics and the poles. This in turn actually results in less precipitation, in other words, less rain, weaker cyclones, and weaker mid-latitude westerly wind flow, which is a recipe for prolonged drought. So right now, a lot of our weather actually comes because there's a huge difference in temperature between the tropics and the Arctic or Antarctic poles. Okay, so when these opposite temperatures is wider, there's more precipitation, stronger cyclones, and more robust wind flow. However, with Arctic ice melting and a warming up of the poles, those temperatures are getting closer together, so which means we're going to have more drought. That is pretty bad. So, yeah. Anyways, this research group in Wyoming, as well as Northern Arizona University, a university in Belgium with a French name I cannot pronounce, the Florence Bascom Geoscience Center, and Cornell University, they all have looked at this. They contributed a paper, they wrote together, and they looked at the evolution of the tropic to pole temperature difference from 3 time periods, which was 100 years ago, 2,000 years ago, and 10,000 years ago. So, and unsurprisingly, they discovered major changes in the last 100 years. So we shall see what happens when they look more into the data and gather more data. So, all right, maybe there is. Well, let's see here. No, for the sake of time, we shall perhaps skip this for now. Yeah, let's skip this. So I was going to play a little video, but we shall skip the UN, Arctic ice video. Instead, I like to talk about the great beyond, because come on, I mean, let's expand our horizons here. All right, so doom and gloom, right? That's what it's been so far, except going back to the moon. That was cool. Climate change, yeah, worrisome. But so I know I typically talk about what is out there, but it's also really important to know, you know, what we're discovering in the very tiny scale, right? So here's an interesting fact. So researchers at the Laboratory for Attosecond Physics. Actually, before I bring this up, let me ask you this. So, what's the shortest time period do you think you can measure? Okay, like you, if I'm counting, I can measure maybe a second, right? Okay, maybe a tenth of a no, I can't see a tenth of a second. Okay, so your alarm clock will measure by seconds, right? Or your cell phone, you can see, put a timer, it's only seconds, right? Well, obviously scientists could do it better than that. It could be doing tenth of a second, hundredth of a second, thousandths of a second. Well, recently, new research has been able to make it down to less than 5 femtoseconds. And in that scale, you can actually visualize electrons, which is crazy. Okay, So, researchers at the Laboratory for Attosecond Physics at LMU, as well as the Max Planck Institute for Quantum Optics, they have developed a microscope that tracks the motion of electrons. So, considering the motion of electrons proceeds on timescales from a few femtoseconds down to attoseconds. Femtoseconds, I believe, is 10 to the negative 12th second, which is unfathomably small period of time. And attoseconds, I actually honestly need to look that up, but I think it's 10 to the negative 15th. Anyway, or something like that. So, obviously with that, yeah, you really cannot see with a human eye. But point is, what do they do? Well, Dr. Matthias Kubel, a former member of the Professor Matthias Klein's team at LMU, so in order to track their motion, we need to freeze a very short, this is what he said. In order to track their motion, we need to freeze a very short intervals as with a high-speed camera. We did this by using laser pulses that lasted less than 5 femtoseconds. It took less than 12 femtoseconds for the distribution of the electrons to change from initial donut shape into a peanut shape. While the electron motion is extremely fast, it is recurring, allowing us to monitor the reproducibility of our method. So, using their microscope, the scientists have shown how the electrons are distributed within a argon atom, argon ion, and how their configuration changes with time. So this was done by shooting 2 more laser pulses onto the excited argon ions, which was generated by the first laser pulse. Okay. So, and then quantum mechanics does something really weird. These laser pulses apparently create a replica of the electron cloud inside the argon ions. And then the replica is imaged on a specialized electron detector, and then these individual images are then compiled by a computer to retrieve a motion of the electron motion. So, yeah, not quite right when it's happening, but pretty close. So this is still fairly exciting. Just imagine being able to see an electron moving around. I would like to see that. So, if you go to if you go to their website, you will be able to see some pictures, but they're, you know, yeah, I think you will need to interpret what you're saying. So it's still not that clear to an untrained eye. Okay. But it's cool that they can measure this now. Now, if we can go down to the very fundamentals of matter, assuming that we can even drill down like even more than the electron, right? Or even shorter time scale. Okay, if we can measure smaller and faster, maybe one day we'll figure out what dark matter is, because that leads me to the second topic, in that I've always assumed that dark matter is pretty much everywhere and that all galaxies have it, but apparently that is not true, which I was really surprised to find, and which you might be as well, right? So there's a team of astronomers who discovered this galaxy called NGC 1052-DF2. And so remember, that was the first galaxy, and this was not quite recent, but fairly recently. This was the first known galaxy to contain little or no dark matter. All right. So, just a note, dark matter is pretty much this mysterious, invisible substance that dominates the makeup of most galaxies and pretty much holds everything together like glue, because otherwise we don't have enough mass, normal matter's mass, to hold our galaxy together. So, without dark matter, in our Milky Way galaxy, we would not have a galaxy. Everything would be spreading apart. Okay, there wouldn't be enough gravity holding it together. So, that's what we assumed, right? We assume that every galaxy has a lot of dark matter. Well, it turns out not true. So, this team, Pieter van Dokkum, from Yale University, his team has shown now that not one, but 2 new studies have support their initial observations, demonstrating that dark matter is in fact separable from galaxies, which is pretty crazy. So, so what are these 2 studies? Well, in the first study, the team confirmed their initial observations of NGC 1052-DF2. Okay, that is way too long. I'm just going to call it DF2, okay? Which basically showed that dark matter is practically absent in the galaxy. When they used WM Keck Observatory's Keck Cosmic Web Imager, which is a large, giant telescope. Here, Keck. Man, Keck Cosmic Web Imager. Yes, KCWI here on Earth. They gathered more precise measurements and found that the globular clusters inside a galaxy are moving at a speed consistent if the galaxy only had normal matter. All right. If there was dark matter in DF2, the clusters would move much faster. Now, recently in the second study, they used once again Keck observatories, but now instead of the Cosmic Web Imager, they used Low Resolution Imaging Spectrometer, LRIS, LRIS. And they looked around and found, guess what? Another galaxy devoid of dark matter. And they named it very uncreatively, I should add. But hey, I guess I have to follow convention. They named it DF4, okay? NGC 1052-DF4. So what does that mean? I mean, first case might be like, oh, you're really rare, right? It's kind of like just discovering life on the universe. Like Earth right now, we're so rare, we have the only intelligent life. And then say we go to Mars or something and discover little intelligent creatures living below the surface. And then we're like, oh my gosh, we're not rare at all, right? This is fairly common. So discovering a second galaxy like that, it basically means, oh my gosh, they're everywhere. There's plenty of galaxies maybe without dark matter. So that's just weird. Now why? They don't know. That's just how it is. So note though, scientists have just decided to kind of classify these guys. So DF2 and DF4, apparently this is separate from the dark matter stuff, but based on the way they look and their structures, okay, so they are physically as large as a Milky Way, but they have between 100 to 1,000 times fewer stars. So they appear kind of fluffy and translucent, like cotton candy, sort of. So making them kind of difficult to observe. So they call these galaxies ultra diffuse galaxies, UDGs. So, yeah, that is just weird. And we're going to play a little short video which talks about that briefly. These dark matter galaxy stuff. See if we can pull it up. Just a note here, Van Dokkum, of course, as any scientist will know, if you make a proclamation that is contrary to quote-unquote accepted knowledge, you get criticized, and that's what happened with him as well. But thankfully, these new data results and the discovery of another one should quiet down some of the criticisms and hopefully get more people interested in figuring out where and why. So, what you just saw was that galaxy. Do you realize how hard it is to observe these things? You just see, right? There's like a gazillion stars and galaxy out there. You got to zoom in that much. And then, of course, you got to analyze its properties and see how it's moving. Yep. So, I'm sure they can find another one, though. And obviously do more research on the current ones and figure something out. Yeah, a lot of exciting news here, right? Research in terms of this. So, speaking of finding more galaxies like this, Daniele, what he's doing, there's leading a wide area survey with this thing called Dragonfly Telephoto Array, DTA. So what they're going to do is look for these examples in a more systematic way, and then observe these candidates again using the larger Keck telescopes. So the idea is to see how common these galaxies are and whether they exist in other areas of our universe, right? And all this data may help us take one step further and try to understand what the heck is dark matter. That's the ultimate goal, right? Okay. All cool and all, but let's bring it back to our solar system, shall we? Let's talk about Mars. Because this is also exciting, because, everybody's goal seems to be eventually let's go to Mars, right? Unfortunately, we're not quite at the point where we say, hey, let's go to Galaxy NGC 1052 DF2 and see where all the dark matter is. Okay, so taking it to a more realistic, for right now, front, a future of exploration, it's Mars. So here's a good thing for future Martian settlers and such, explorers. There's apparently groundwater on Mars, and not just at the poles. Also, just pretty much, anywhere, really. I mean, depending on where, but so here's the thing, right? So back in mid-2018, the Italian Space Agency, they detected the presence of deep water lake on Mars under southern polar ice caps. Now, researchers at the University of Southern California Arid Climate and Water Research Center, what a beautiful acronym, AWARE, A-W-A-R-E, they have published a study that suggests deep groundwater could still be active on Mars and could actually spout forth in surface streams in some areas around the equator. All right, so they have determined that groundwater on Mars likely exists in a broader geographical area. So and there could be active systems as deep as 750 meters, which if you multiply by about 3, what does that mean? That's about 20, let's just say 2,500 feet underwater. I mean, not underwater, underground. So these groundwater, they could come to the surface through cracks in the specific craters, kind of like geysers, I guess, or like little springs, right? Yeah, spring water. So imagine drinking Martian spring water. I wonder what that tastes like. And then bringing it back to Earth and then selling it for a whole ton of money. Okay, business idea right here. All right, that's what's going to happen. Martians are going to export Martian spring water to Earth. And we're going to buy them up. All right, that aside, who knows if that's going to happen. The future's wild, right? But point is, that's great. There's water. So guess what? Mars is not as dry as, we always knew Mars is not dry, but you don't have to go to the polar ice caps to get water. You can just drill down a couple hundred feet, right? We have that technology. So, in any case, now, where do they get all this information? Well, they actually looked at stuff on Earth. So, this guy named Heggie, what happened, he's a member of the Mars Express sounding radar experiment, MARSIS probing Mars surface. Oh my gosh, I'm tired of saying all these ridiculous names. Okay, the point is, when they looked at the dried short streams of water that appeared on some of the crater walls on Mars, a lot of scientists thought these features were affiliated with, surface water flow or close-up surface water flow, okay? Which then is like, okay, how the heck does that happen, right? But Heggie and his associate, Abotalib, they proposed an alternative hypothesis, and they based it from their research in desert hydrology, okay? Basically water in the desert. So they've seen mechanisms in North African Sahara and in the Arabian Peninsula, and they had the same kind of features as those on Mars, okay? So what does that mean? They concluded that fractures within some of Mars's craters enable these water springs to rise up to the surface as a result of deep pressure, pressure deep below. Then the springs leaked onto the surface and generated these really distinctive linear features found on those walls of those Martian craters, right? So, and that could explain why these water features fluctuate with the seasons on Mars. So, look forward to reading this full report in Nature Geoscience, that magazine. So, it'd be interesting to study the fractures and maybe eventually go down there and see what we find with a robot or something. Deep, groundwater, right? Cool. So, before we go on break, I would like to just add one more thing about Mars, and this is separate. So, besides water, apparently people are also interested in rocks. Okay. So currently the University of Alabama, sorry, not University of Alabama, I see U of A, and that's what I think, but it's University of Alberta in Canada has more than 1,800 specimens of more than 275 meteorites. So you may be wondering, okay, that sounds like a lot, but you got to realize those things like they were ejected from Mars and landing on Earth, and the chance of us getting another one randomly ejected from Mars to Earth is pretty slim. So as Chris Hurt says, he's a geologist from the University of Alberta. We really, so far, we've only understood Mars due to remote sensing, such as rovers and orbiters. If we're going to answer the big questions, such as, hey, life, do you still exist there? We need to collect and return rock samples to Earth. That means we really need to get some more rocks from Mars. Okay, so, anyways, this means that the NASA Mars 2020 mission, which is coming up, that there's a plan for it to collect samples, okay, and return it back to Earth. That's exciting. We will finally have recent Martian samples returned back to Earth, assuming that the funding holds, which I hope it does. Can you imagine? We got stuff from Mars and return it back to Earth. That's really exciting if we can do that, okay? So if that happens, though, it won't be until probably 2022 at the earliest, because this lander/rover doesn't land on Mars until the spring of 2021, assuming everything's on schedule. And there's funding. A lot of maybes, but let's cross our fingers and hopefully that happens. Okay. So with that, let's take a short break. You've been listening to SG2 on Space, episode number 26, with your host Shingun. When we get back, let's talk about the EHA Space Cowboys, right?
Man, you still here? Go on and subscribe.
Yo, we back at it again, baby.
What?
Get into action.
3.
Get in the action.
Tell me what is the deal, tell me what is the deal.
So I challenge you today to start strong.
I ain't seen you.
Get into action.
Tell me what is the deal. Cause I'm calling for you.
In the action.
Can you feel that? See, I'm calling for you. Can you feel that? See, I'm calling for you. Can you feel that? See, I'm calling for you. Say how you really feel.
Hey, what up, everybody? It's your girl, Jay Nicole, and you know who that is over there.
Hey, man, it's your brother Atun Ra. It's Wednesday, you know what time it is. A1 Live, man. Got Project Gray Roof in the building. Wake Up Apparel. Hey, man, it's finna go down, man. Got some tech geniuses in the building, man. They finna put it down. A1 Live coming to you. Tune in, tune in.
Get into action.
Oh,
Right now. Twitter, Facebook,
everything.
Yeah.
Tune in to everything.
Get into action.
Action 1.
Inspire today. Join us by being a sponsor at weareA1.com.
All right, and we are back in the studio with Shin Good. Okay, I don't know why I'm using that voice. Maybe I think my normal voice is a little too high pitched. Huh. Maybe one day I should do a show where I just talk like this. Yes. Okay, that aside, back to all seriousness, right? SG2 on Space, episode number 26. So before we went on break, we went over, let's see, the new directive mission for NASA back to the moon by 2024. Mike Pence's speech, right? UN warning on extreme weather and the fact that things are going to get a lot worse for us because we can't seem to tamp down global warming / climate change. Scientists being able to film atoms for the first time ever, electrons, which is pretty cool. Galaxies with no dark matter, which is also really cool. Possible deep underground water on Mars. Great. Possible Mars sample return mission in 2020 actually, Mars 2020, but won't get back for a while. Also very interesting. Now let's talk about what people are doing right now for actual exploration or in the near future. All right, so occasionally I like to report bad news. Okay, so for instance, China, right? A few years ago, Chinese government allowed private space companies, which is, you know, you may be thinking, wow, that's kind of weird. But then again, China wants innovation as well. And what better route than allowing, you know, entrepreneurs to do it versus a government? So China's company OneSpace, they were going to do their OSM-1 launch vehicle on Wednesday, March 27th, and it failed. All right. So, too bad. So, I'm not going to play a video of that. But anyways, so they launched that. They tried to launch at 5:39 a.m. Eastern time from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in northwest China. So there was a loss of control of the launch vehicle shortly after the first stage separation, around 1 minute after launch. Hey, rocket science is pretty hard, okay? So granted, give them some credit. So OneSpace is still investigating the cause of the launch failure. So this rocket is 19 meters tall, 20 metric tons, and is designed to loft a 205 kilogram payload to 300 kilometer low Earth orbit. So it's a very small rocket, okay? This one was actually carrying a payload. Obviously, that one was lost. It was carrying a Lingtrid 1B technology verification satellite for Zero G Labs, which is another Beijing company private company that builds micro and nano satellites and components, established in 2016. Wow, lots of new space companies in China here. So it was a 6U satellite, which was planned to test technologies for Zero G Labs' planned Lingtrid constellation of 132 remote sensing satellites with a resolution of better than 4 meters. So it's one of those small sat companies. Exciting news. Not exciting news that their prototype satellite was destroyed. But hey, I'm sure they can build another one and get ready for the next launch. Lingtrid, by the way, it's in Chinese. Do you know what it means? Okay, it means spirit magpie. Like spirit, like ghost, or your spirit, Ling. Like Ling Chi. Ling. Okay, anyways. Trid, like ma trid, is like magpie, the bird. Yes, it's a spirit magpie. The spirit magpie has died, at least this first launch. But don't worry, eventually there are going to be 132 spirit magpies flying around. They're all going to be chirping to each other and taking pictures. Okay. I just thought that's a funny name. But anyways, that aside, let's see. OSM-1 also has a funny name. No, not nearly as funny. Forget it. It's yeah, doesn't have any of that. But okay. But anyways, they said, you know, obviously they aren't too happy, but they said this was a valuable attempt for us to correct our technology. Noted they did have some success in the past with suborbital launches, which means it goes up and then comes down. But hey, they're going to try again, I'm sure, in a few months. So we'll see what happens. So, all right, moving to Europe here. Germany is doing something interesting. Their space agency, DLR, has began a study this month on a reusable launcher concept that will use a winged first stage booster, capture and descent by aircraft, and tow back to land. Okay, so what they're doing, this is crazy, what they're doing is that they're starting a 3-year study for develop a rocket catcher. All right, so yeah, that's pretty wild. And this project is called Falcon. Nothing to do with SpaceX. Falcon stands for Formation Flight for Formation Flight for In-Air Launcher First Stage Capturing Demonstration. What? Did I even say that right? I don't even know how these acronyms come. What the heck? Okay, whatever. That's what it stands for, all right? Maybe it's in German, for all I know. All right. So, Martin Seppel, DLR's Falcon project leader, said the European Commission granted $3 million for 2.6 years for the project, which is a fairly small amount. But hey, this is just for the first stage. essentially, what is the point of doing this? Well, once again, as he puts it, if we tow a rocket back, we save on the mass of the complete propulsion system for flyback. That provides a performance advantage, right? So, yeah, I mean that's exciting news to be able to reuse rockets, right? So, winged first stage booster, capture and descent by aircraft. That's pretty cool. Now, please note, SpaceX is doing something similar, except their first stage still fires their propulsion system and lands back. So it's like lands back on their drumstick, right? Which is cool. This one will, like, you know, get dropped down and somehow, I don't know, somehow gets caught by an aircraft. All right. So, different technique, but still the thing is to make it reusable, right? Because being reusable makes things much cheaper rather than use it once, discard it, and then have to build a whole new one. That takes a lot more time and effort and money. So, speaking of money, the Israelis should be happy. At least the Israeli company, which launched the first ever Israeli spacecraft lander to the moon called Bereshet. So, Israeli robotic lander, X Prize Foundation said, if you guys successfully land there, we're going to give you $1 million. And it's like, oh, we didn't expect that. And they're like, yep, we're going to give it to you. So that's cool. Remember, about a year ago, the Google Lunar X Prize of $30 million passed, right? And then nobody won. And they're like, okay, whatever. We're going to keep doing this anyway since we're so close. We don't care if there's no prize money or anything, right? But now X Prize Foundation, Peter Diamandis, the chair and founder of that, he basically said this: Space IL's, that's Israeli company, Space IL's mission represents the democratization of space exploration. We're optimistic about seeing this first domino fall, setting off a chain reaction of increasingly affordable and repeatable commercial missions to the moon and beyond. Though the Lunar X Prize, anyways, and this is called the Moonshot Award, by the way. So, X Prize CEO Anushi Ansari, who, by the way, was a space tourist and is a multi-billionaire Iranian American lady. Okay, very cool. I met her once. Anyways, she said in the same statement. She came to Houston once. You see, she said in the same statement, though the Google Lunar X Prize went unclaimed, we're thrilled to have stimulated a diversity of teams from around the world to pursue their ambitious lunar missions, and we are proud to be able to recognize Space IL's accomplishment with this Moonshot Award. Yay. Right? Okay. So, apparently, that's awesome. Okay. So, aside from this, you guys, so even if you're a loser for some X Prize competition, you may get money if you succeed, later. So that's good. Okay. In any case, talk about when is it actually going to arrive. Well, it's actually going to arrive pretty soon, April 11th, actually. So April 11th, if everything works out, this Israeli robotic lander Bereshet will land on the moon, and it will be the 4th country in the world to do so. Yeah, Soviet Union, United States, China, and now Israel. So. Besides, this is not really to do science. This is interesting. Besides, obviously having the Israeli flag, there's also a time capsule on the lander that includes a 30 million page archive of human history and culture. And this lunar library was provided by the Arch Mission Foundation, which aims to back up humanity's accumulated knowledge by storing records of it in locations that's not on Earth. Which makes me curious to research more into this foundation. It's called Arch, A-R-C-H, Mission Foundation, and their purpose is to back up our collective knowledge in pretty much other worlds. That's awesome. So, yeah, if Earth ever gets destroyed, apparently aliens could go on the moon and dig up this artifact and learn all about Earth. So, with that, wow, man, it's almost that time. Oh my gosh, I thought I was going to talk about crazy alien stuff, but I guess I just running pretty short on time. I do want to briefly mention Betz Spheres, though. B-E-T-Z Sphere. Let's see if we can pull up a few pictures of that. So, Betz Spheres is this really mysterious sphere discovered by the BETZ family. It's a gigantic metal sphere is apparently it has like 4 magnetic fields going inside, made of materials that no one knows what it is. Super, like, it does weird stuff, like vibrates and moves around on its own, and like reacts to music and all that. And they just found it one day after a bushfire in 1974 at George Island, Florida. At first, they thought it was really amusing, and they played around with it. And then the U.S. government, of course, and the military all comes knocking on their door. And then the Best family is like, no, we're not giving it to you. And then they take it anyway, because that's what happens. All right. And then they did some research, and they found out that the initial X-ray could not even penetrate it. Then the Navy used a 300 kilovoltage X-ray and discovered the sphere contained 2 more spheres inside and were surrounded by a bunch of materials in between. And there were also 4 magnetic poles, 2 negative and 2 positive. Dr. Carl Wilson, he also found that the sphere contained radioactive elements and believed that it defied the laws of physics. And Dr. J. Harder, who also conducted research, said the elements inside the sphere were heavier than anything known in the scientific community. So, crazy stuff. Crazy, crazy. Yeah, and I could go on and talk about how it made throbbing noises, cause doors to slam open and shut, like as if it's paranormal or did something, and cause music to blast out. But anyways, there's a whole bunch of that. So, okay, I'm not sure if the pictures are pulling up, but that's fine. One last thing before we go. In America, we got the best spheres, right? In China, just to note, another alien artifact left behind. It's called the Bygone Pipes. So, this is in Mount Bygone, discovered in 2002. Mount Bygone is an area in China that it's like nobody lives there because it's adjacent to the Quadam Basin, which is at the foothills of the Himalayan mountains, and it's really harsh climate, and nobody's there, hence why nobody discovered this until 2002. And what did they find? They found a pyramid-like outcropping that measured 50-60 meters high. This is walled off by a system of well-arranged pipe structures that ends at Lake Tosanhu, which is a saltwater lake located about 300 feet away from the outcropping. Okay, and then there's 3 entrances. 2 of them have collapsed, and the remaining one leads into a dugout cave whose rocky interior floor has all these embedded pipes. Okay, so what the heck? Why is it going to a saltwater lake, and what are all these pipes doing? No idea. So these pipes, apparently some of them measure 1.5 feet in diameter, and the others like less than an inch in diameter. And nobody knows what it is. And by the way, apparently it's also radioactive. So they also found it subjected to extreme heat before being forged and shaped and processed. That kind of resembles human-made metalworking. So no one knows. So who knows? Maybe aliens were hanging out there like 150,000 years ago or something. Gosh. Yep, very much a possibility. All right. So apparently you can find them you can see aliens not just in the sky, but you can also discover their artifacts on the ground. So just a note, guys. If you have no luck looking up at the sky and see anything, you still need to look up. But maybe dig around your backyard and maybe you find a sphere or some random pipes or something. Okay, just go walk in the desert. Maybe you'll find something. But really, no, don't do that. Okay, with that, we are concluded with SG2 on Space episode number 26. Now, please note, follow us at facebook.com/theshinshow, as well as facebook.com/actiononemedia. Lovely poster behind us, right? And with that, I would like to say thank you, Action One Media, and that's about it. So, until next time, and don't forget, look up. You never know what you see.
Peace, it's Brother Atum Ra, and you tuned in to Action One Network.